I've never seen a diamond in the flesh. I cut my teeth on wedding rings.
Dude, that's pretty cool.
Man, that is a sad clown.
Dude, that's pretty good.
This is The Gloom, bringing you weekly interviews with F3 Omaha packs, exploring their F3 experiences and finding those sticky elements that create the glue in the gloom.
Shout out to our sponsors Major Team Mortgage, Omaha Laser Dentistry, Exclusively Eye Care, and Liberty Core Real Estate. We appreciate their support. Now let's get back to the gloom.
And we're back. This guy, man, I just love seeing his smiling face. And I think the number of ways he's led our group is countless. I think of his name as being an action that a lot of us take on a certain social media platform when we see something we like. But I also think about all the discussions he's led, all of the wisdom he's shared about parenting, being a good husband, being a good friend. And then also, most of us are not professionals, but this guy has given a few people some advice. I think mostly telling people to stay off of it if it hurts, right? The old, if it hurts, don't do it. But man, Retweet is who we've got, and we are excited to see you, brother. So why don't you take us back to the beginning, maybe how it all started, who EH'd you, what was the first workout like, and then how did we land on the name Retweet?
Well, absolutely. And Pony and Plague, thank you for having me. As I mentioned earlier, I've listened to probably just about every one of these. And actually, I've gone back and listened to several of them kind of randomly again, because what I found is that, you can know someone when you're running with them, you can know them when you're having coffee, but really when they're asked questions and they give pointed answers, you can really learn a lot. And sometimes the knowledge that they share is really good. And so I like to hear that again from several of the PAX members. So it's been really good. So thank you for having me. Thank you for doing this. My first workout was on December 26th of 2020. And what kind of led up to that was I was going skiing with my daughters, and I was kind of trying to get in shape a little bit. And I thought I was in a little bit of shape. And as you know, when you go skiing, you sometimes find out that you're not really in very good shape. So I think I was really just probably on the elliptical machine watching, binge watching Ozark as much as I probably could. So we went skiing. That's actually a good story because we got about halfway out there. We got to Grand Island, and my wife called and said, "Hey, you got to turn around and come back," because the ride my daughter used to school, she tested positive for COVID. So that was when you still had the quarantine. So we got to Grand Island, turned around, came all the way back to Omaha, then drove back out to Breckenridge later that day. So it was a really long day. So I was really tired. So my older daughter, and I skied for 2 days, and I just found out I'm not in very good shape at all. And I had been kind of watching Twitter, and Chris Gradeville had posted, and I saw some of his tweets and some of his posts about F3. And I remember thinking, that looks really cool. And I was going to reach out to Chris about it at some point in time. That looks really cool, but no way am I going to do that in the wintertime. Just absolutely no way. So when I got back, I thought, you know what, maybe I should get in a little bit better shape. So I just looked up F3. And I was going to reach out to Chris, but I just didn't for some reason. And so I went out to the Oracle and did the 7 a.m. December 26th workout. And it was Dr. Thunder's VQ. Oh, nice. And it was really pretty cool day. So I pulled in the parking lot about 6:50 or so. And there were several guys there already because the 6 a.m. Oracle was going on. And so I just kind of walked up to the group, and I think Khakis, Tater, several other guys were there that, who I had no idea who they were, but they certainly welcomed me in and they figured out I was a new guy. So that was the first workout. And it was interesting because it was cold and snowy and icy day after Christmas. And I remember thinking, what the heck is some of this stuff? Because it was just kind of weird and odd. And I remember getting done with the workout, and this is not a knock on Dr. Thunder at all. I didn't think it was that hard, solely because I hung back. I was watching more than I was doing anything else. And I didn't really think, this isn't that hard. I could see where it would be, but I was tired later on. I remember that. So that was the first workout. And I get in a circle at the end, and I kind of knew I was going to get a nickname, but I didn't really know anything about it because I had not talked to anybody that was an F3 member before coming out to this. So this was truly an unknown thing to me. And, they started asking me who I was, where I was from, what do I do, etc. And I'm a nickname guy. I'm from a small town, and everybody in my hometown has a nickname, whether you want it or not. And you are sometimes anointed with that nickname when you're very young, and that sticks with you through life. So I kind of want to get something kind of cool. And they're asking me what I do, and I said I'm a physical therapist, father of 3, from a small town. What's your mascot? What do you like to do? And I'm thinking, give me something Caddyshack or something like that. And then somebody said, who brought you? And I said, well, nobody. I saw this on Twitter. And so Khakis kind of punched me. He says, retweet. And that was kind of it. It was just, so he says, you retweet. And that was Dr. Thunder. And I thought, what? That's it?
I give you so much cooler stuff than that.
I mean, I want to be Judge Smales, or I want to be something really cool, or something with, I don't know. So that's how I got my nickname. And just like a lot of the guys that I hear on these podcasts and you hear talking to, I wouldn't say I was disappointed that I wasn't overly excited about it. But then as time went on, it certainly became, such a bigger deal to me with what happened to Chris. So, yeah, so that's the first day. Now, I will say the workout that day I didn't think was that big a deal, again, because I wasn't really working that hard. However, my third workout was CSOP. And that was a different, that was completely mind-blowing. And, I don't want to delve on about this too much. So I worked out on Saturday, and I went back on, I believe it was Tuesday, to the Coliseum. And it snowed that day. Maybe it was Thursday Battlefield, I can't remember which one. And it snowed that day, a couple good inches. I remember laying in the middle of the field and we were doing flutter kicks. I'm looking up and the snow's getting in my face. And I thought, this is awesome. I just loved it. And I thought, this is really cool. And so guys had said, hey, you should come on Saturday. We're going to do this CSOP. And I had no idea, absolutely no idea what it was. And I think, I don't know, Stinger said, yeah, we're going to run a couple miles. It's no big deal. You run a mile, you kind of sit around, you don't do anything. You kind of run another mile. There'll be a car if you get in trouble. So I said, I'll go. And again, I didn't know anybody. I literally knew no one except Icy Hot, because I had talked to him years ago when we were kind of working in the same field. So I knew him, but just that much, not very much. And so then when CSOP came, I literally had to be carried in. Merch and Biff, I think, walked me home the last mile, and I thought I was going to die. I mean, I literally thought I was going to die. I got in the car after just freezing in that parking garage, just literally freezing. And I called my wife and I said, I'm in trouble. And she said, oh my God, what's going on? Are you okay? I'm like, no. I said, you're going to have to come help me get me out of the truck, because I don't get to get out. Because I was cold and sore and I hadn't run at all. And so I learned a lesson about, how hard a workout can be. And granted, that's a little bit different case, but that was my third workout.
That was Shawshank, right? That was the one that, yeah.
Yep. And I absolutely loved it. I loved every bit of it. I was hooked really from kind of day one on. It probably took me until maybe, I don't think I came out again until maybe that following Tuesday or Thursday. But then after that, I started coming out on a very, very, very consistent basis.
Nice.
Well, it's quite the initiation, right? Hitting a CSOP on your
Oh my God.
workout.
Oh my God. I would like to go back and talk to all those guys who told me, yeah, you can do this, and literally punch every one of them in the face. I would like to do that.
Stinger's a listener. You gotta, we gotta find out, Stinger, what was, he totally undersold you on that CSOP.
Yeah, I think so. Well, the first workout, I will tell you what was really important about that was, Icy came up to me that day and, talked to me, and he sent me a text later. Khaki sent me a text later that Saturday. Tater Tot sent me a text. I think that Dr. Thunder sent me a text saying, hey, welcome, come back again, be part of this. And that was so cool. So cool. So
well, I'm
I was
always
really
interested in, I'm always so interested in guys who show up without someone bringing them, right? I mean, there's this level of mystery, and you don't know what you're getting yourself into. And, it sounds like you had a good experience to come back, and then we're duped into doing a CSOP, and look, here you are. And
it was great. I was hooked really from day one, and CSOP sent me back a couple of days, but I was hooked from day one. I loved it. I loved everything about it. It was cool.
Were you always so you're a physical therapist, right? So assuming at some point you've done some athletics, or I guess what was life like growing up for you as far as like fitness and exercise and sports?
Oh, moderately heavy. So I grew up in a small town in Nebraska where you played everything, football, basketball, ran track, everything. So I was always doing something. I ran track in high school, and I was being a small town, you played everything and you were fairly good at everything, or you kind of weren't. I was good at some things and not at others. I was always good at kind of sprinting and things like that. And then in college and certainly going on the rest of my life, I always stayed active, always stayed in shape, and was always doing something, whether it be, I've done yoga at 5:30 in the morning for years and things like that. So, and I think that, with what my profession is and what I do, if I'm not in shape and fit, I can't tell someone else what to do. And so I think I'm a very big believer of, your presentation, what you look like, and how you can do things is very important. What you can talk to patients or certainly other people about. So I've always stayed in shape, running, walking, yoga, like I said, or, elliptical, and certainly some weights and things like that. So, but I had kind of fallen back a little bit, like everybody has, 3 kids, busy, not as consistent as probably I should have been. But I would say I was average active going back kind of pre F3.
Well, I do like this idea of practicing what you preach, right? You're a living example of that. Hey, I'm not going to go talk to people about how they should be doing something if I can't do it myself. It's, the concept of don't cue it if you can't do it. I like that too.
Yeah.
Curious from just a fitness perspective, how do you think F3 kind of stacks up and we do for guys on a fitness level?
Oh, that's a great question, because there are so many levels of fitness ability in F3. I've got a book, and it's called Endurance, talking about how you can push yourself to the limit of things. And I think Farva wrote it. It's like trying to run a marathon in an hour and 50 or something crazy like that. But then you can take someone who is out of shape or overweight, and they can still get a good workout at almost any workout that we have. I really appreciate how you can modify as much as you need to. I really appreciate how no matter what you do, there's always someone going to be with you, no matter if it's a run at Paradise or a Murph. I did a Murph this morning, and a guy this was his 3rd workout on a Murph. And I'm like, dude, you're the man for doing that. He's 20-some years old, and he was struggling, but you know what? He did it. And I think that's so cool. And I think that you can have as much fitness as you want. So I always think Convergence is a good example. You go to Convergence, and you really work that hard at Convergence. No, I mean, you talk to 60 guys at some point in time. But if you're pre-ran, and you ran with somebody like, like you Plague, or somebody like Cataracts or Farva, you're going to die during the Convergence. You're going to be really tired, but that's up to you. And I used to think that as a Q, I owed it to people to just not beat them up, but really give them a really good workout. And I back from that a little bit, because if people really want to get that extra level working out, you're going to pre-run, or you're going to push yourself a little harder during the actual work. And you have to be very aware of the people that are there, and you have to be able to change the workout so you can modify to their ability level as well. So maybe you need to tone it down just a little bit. So I think that you can work as hard or as little as you want to at almost any workout by just incorporating a pre-run. That's such a big deal from the fellowship part as well, but certainly the fitness.
Well, I think that's good to be mindful of. I mean, Free Delete talks about, like, if you make it hard, people will show up, right? I mean, and Plague and I often have conversations about, well, how hard should you actually make the workout? And I like this idea of, well, you make it hard, but also make it accessible to other guys. Make it to where it can be modified. Make it to where there's a pre-run offering or whatever it is. I really like this of being more inclusive to the other guys.
And typically how hard a workout's going to be. Plague, you're going to do burpees. Slow pitch is going to have you hop on one foot at some point in time. Mufasa is going to have you do burpees. Wait time, you're going to do the stymel. You kind of know what the workout's going to be. If you're new, you might not know what the workout's going to be. But, as you get to be a couple times into it, you know how hard it's going to be. And, I'm not going to pre-run that day, but I'm going to get this done that time. So,
well, curious about I guess a reflection from you on where you think your fitness level is since joining the group.
Oh, it's gone through a big change overall. I'll go back and say, I was not running that much, and I still don't run that much now. But I certainly can run. But I'm stronger, I'm fitter, I'm healthier, and I'm 3 years older than I was. I'm 50 right now, and I can do a Murph this morning and just I can just pop it out. But if you asked me 5 years ago, could you do 100 pull-ups unassisted? Like, no way. I mean, there's absolutely no way. But now, that's something I love doing that. And I never could have done that before. And I never would have run as much as I did before. I never would have done as many push-ups or anything like that prior to F3. I would have done some level of that, but certainly not what I'm doing right now. And right now I'm kind of in a place where I'm not actually going as much as I was going back, say, a year ago, because there's some other things. But it's amazing how much more fit I am than I was before.
Have you been skiing since you started?
Once, and my son and daughter both texted me last week and said, "Hey, we're going to go again at Christmas this year." So I said, "Yeah." So I just kind of started looking at some things again. So I got to start running a little bit more. I got to start doing some more squats and things like that in this next month to get ready for that again.
Yeah,
So,
I love it. Hey, I'm curious because you jumped right in, and gosh, the CSOP within 3 days. So the fellowship, that second F piece probably was like, overwhelming a little bit. But how have you gone about developing key relationships? Because one of the things that I think when a lot of guys meet you, they're like, they kind of reference maybe your M and and sort of her role in their children's life. I've heard that come up many times, but just like, how have you built relationships over the years?
That's been interesting as well, because a lot of people do know my wife and have had some sort of medical interaction with her. F3 came along at a really good time for me because my job changed the September before. I went from working in a clinic all day long seeing patients to going into a management role. And so I came from being someone who came to see every day and had a very consistent work staff around me, to managing people. And when you're the boss and you go into a clinic, that changes things just a little bit. The jokes aren't the same, the interactions aren't the same. So that kind of changed a little bit. And I was not having the banter that I did with, 8, 10, 12, 15 patients in a day that I had before. So I was kind of missing that in my life. And you get that with F3 because you can have a ton of in-depth conversations, but you can really have a lot of banter in general, 1, 2, 3, 5-minute conversations. And I really, really like that. And that was gone. I missed that from September up into that December timeframe. So the F3 fellowship came along right at the right point in time for me. And the welcoming that I got from the different guys was so good that it was hard not to become, friends with a lot of guys on a fairly quick basis. And I didn't go to coffee very much right at the beginning because I would go home, take my daughter to school. But when I could on Saturdays some of the time, I really liked that. And, the conversations you would have somebody at coffee or in a pre-run, and then the text that would follow up that, "Hey, where are you going to go the next day? What are you thinking about this?" And there's so many guys that are so good about reaching out and saying, "Hey, it was great to see you today. Haven't seen you in a long time. Hey, you want to run tomorrow?" That's been such a good thing. And then that's just, kind of taken off and gone into, whether you golf with someone or the poker tournament I played in on Friday night, there was 40 guys there. That's never been a really good thing. And I'm somebody who has a fair amount of friends, but not a lot of them live around here. And I know a lot of people in the kind of general sense. And to be able to have, I went to the store yesterday. There's Dirty Bird, and 15 minutes later, I go, "Hey, you probably better go. Your wife and kids have been gone for 15 minutes." That's just such a cool thing to be able to have that. And I know that I'm going to go to the Creighton game tomorrow night, and I'll see 5, 6, 10 guys. That's such a cool thing, and they're not necessarily long, in-depth conversations, but they certainly can be. And that's such a really, really, really cool thing. So the fellowship's been absolutely awesome. It's helped me develop lots of casual friendships and certainly some deeper ones as well.
Well, and you had mentioned knowing Chris before, and I'm assuming you know it. I mean, Icy Hot, you knew Icy Hot from prior. Curious about how those relationships changed over time with the group, right? Kind of going through the same things at different times in your life. Curious on how that kind of worked out.
Sure. I'm glad you brought Chris back into play. So I knew Chris. I took care of Chris when he was in high school as an athlete. And I talked about this at his run here a couple weeks ago. He was just a stud. He was so good. He would enter the room, and he'd come into my clinic, and he would know everybody immediately. And he was just such a good guy. And then I would go watch him play at Creighton, and inevitably I'd go down at the end of the game, something like that, and he'd give my kids a ball. So he was just such a good guy. So I lost track of touch with him kind of for a while when he was gone. But then when he came back, certainly, he was one of the first guys to reach out to me after he saw my name on the list. I think I saw him, would have been maybe 10 days later at Octagon. Big hug. It was so fantastic. So, really, Chris is the reason I'm part of F3. And, it will always be a big deal to me. So it was very special. And I wish that, I'd been able to connect with him more in that time frame. So as far as Icy Hot, again, he reached out to me right away. And one of the guys I would run with a lot was Icy Hot, because he was very good at reaching out to me. We have a lot of same shared interests, same things we talk about from the medical world. And he's one of my favorite guys to run with because we always have something to talk about that's really good. And then he gave me the flag at Paradise as well. So I always feel like I owe him for that. So yeah, the
Forever
relationship's
indebted.
very, very
That's
much.
how that works.
Yeah, trap me into it. So
I love
thank
it.
you for bringing up Chris. I think that the impact that Chris Bradwell had on me. Look what Sparty's done, and just look what for so many people. Such a big impact. It's just you talk about legacy, huge.
Heck yeah, man. And we've got one of our questions sort of more towards the end. We'll ask you, we'll revisit that legacy piece, but I want to get your thoughts on something else because so you're a Q source guy, right? Not everybody we talk to knows Q source or is into Q source, but this concept of the concentrica and kind of the relationships that we prioritize. Tell me about that. How have you sort of gone about prioritizing relationships over the years?
Good question. I think that, first of all, I love Q Source. I think that even if you can just go for 10 minutes, because you're going to hear something in 10 minutes from someone that will have an impact on your day. And I think it's good to go to different Q sources if you can, because whether you're at Paradise or whether you're at the pit or someplace like that, a lot of the same guys are there. And you're going to hear them at different times say different things, but it's good to hear different points of view from different people. And the good thing is, the topics change all the time. And not only the topics change, but where you are in your world changes. Mm-hmm. So you may be, really up or really down, and something affects you a certain way, and you respond a certain way, and you can share that time. And so I think about, we talk about freed to lead. I'm getting off track a little bit here. But you talk about freed to lead. Free to lead applies to everybody, no matter where you are. But it applies to you differently at different times in your year or in your life. So I for everybody who's got free to lead, I always think once a month, once a week, once a quarter, open it up and just open up to a random page and read that, because that's going to apply to you differently than it did the first time you read it. So going back to concentrica, I think that the most important relationship you can have is with your spouse by far. And then certainly, you bring your kids into play with that as well, but you have to have a good relationship with your spouse. And for the guys who are divorced, I know it's a tricky issue, but how your kids see you treat your M and how other people see you treat your M is so important. It's huge. So that's always been kind of my biggest thing is, you have to treat your wife the right way. And my wife, who deals with a lot of weird things, she's an obstetrician, and so she hears a lot of different things from women. The best advice she always tells men is you have to continue to date your wife. So I always try to make sure we do that, and even I fall off of that knowing I should do that. So you have to take care of what's most important to you, and for most of us, for me anyway, that's my wife.
I love it. Something too about the Q source stuff is it really expands on some of the relationships, right? You kind of hear how a guy is approaching certain pieces of his life, like how they're raising their kids or how they approach work, or and so then you kind of just like unravel another layer and then build another relationship. I've always loved that. I'm curious your thoughts too, because something else that sort of a big life transition, although you don't look 50, but you've entered this respect group, and just kind of curious how maybe the relationships with guys have helped with that transition, or maybe it's been an easy transition. I don't know, but curious your thoughts there.
It's been an interesting transition. How's that sound? So because thank you for saying I don't necessarily look 50. Certain parts of me feel 50. There's a little more aches and pains now than there have ever been before. And actually, I think I can blame that on F3 because I did the Murph this morning. I know I'll be sore tomorrow, and that's dadgum district's fault. I think that you look around at a workout or at a coffee or anything, and you see who's there, and you see how they are continuing to try to accelerate and get better. And obviously, khakis, wait time, those guys come to mind, but there are so many guys with the Ozark, and you can name tons of names, but look at guys like Brad Pitt. Look at guys that are Q-Tip, guys that are continuing to accelerate. And so I think that's really important because it shows you that, hey, yeah, you're 50, but so, there's other guys that are older than you. And I think for guys like Pony that, that you're young, you look at a guy like me like, wait a second, I'm tired and sore. Well, Retweet's 50. He was there. I can get out there. So I think that's so important to see that. Because, I think a big problem that we have in our world is apathy. toward whatever. And in my world, a lot of that is apathy toward not wanting to do hard things. I work out.
Mm.
And it's so easy to stop working out. You get done with high school, you get done with college, and you don't go for a walk, you don't go for a run, and you just go downhill so fast. And that leads to so many problems, being overweight, diabetes, but then the mental component of that as well. And then you don't feel as good. So I think that, continue to do hard things with your body and challenge your body is such a good thing. That makes your mind more clear. And then being around people like other F3 PAX members who are trying to get better and challenge themselves only raises your game. And again, look at guys like, I'm amazed at guys like Farva and Chernobyl doing 40,000 pull-ups. Are you kidding me?
Mm-hmm.
So if people like that can do things, it makes you want to do harder things as well. So yeah, 50, so what? Keep going.
Yeah. I love it. The other sort of thing that I was going to ask you about, because I think, the level of relationship kind of depends on vulnerability, right? And I have been blown away several times. You've given a COT and you've opened up to the group, and so this idea of like, men getting vulnerable with each other, sharing life and sharing stories and making each other better, has a huge impact on relationships. But I'm also curious, as you think about like that third F and the faith piece, like how does that all come together for you with it, the relationships, maybe it's the COTs, the prayer, the serving the community. I mean, tell us how that looks in your life.
Yeah. Faith is, that's a really interesting thing. It would be third F or I think that, my background is raised Catholic, K through 12, 6 years in college at a Catholic university. So I always say I know the readings. And, but I think faith is, there's a religious component to faith, which is, my belief in God and Jesus and that. But I think that, I like to think in terms more of belief and, what you believe in and, what form of God you believe in is certainly a big deal. But I think, the way you believe in other people is probably a bigger thing.
Mm.
So, I think the thing that F3 has really been good to me about from a faith standpoint is, and so going back to kind of COTs here playing, guys open up and tell stories. I was there at Spike one time when you talked about what you've been through, and you hear about guys talk about, their children not talking to them and, getting fired from jobs and things like that. That vulnerability comes out there. But there's a lot of people who I think are in F3 that with what they've been through in their life, I'm not sure I would have given them a second chance.
Mm.
So, the faith you can have in someone can be restored by them opening up.
Mm.
And I think that's way more important than, going to church on Sunday and going through the motions and doing that. That's still important. It's still very important that you do that. But I think that, you're believing in other people is a huge deal. Such a huge thing. Now, that being said, I think it's very important that you have a very good foundation of religion in your life for your kids and for you as well, because we all need kind of a guidepost to bring us back to. And for me, the belief part is I love to go to a church on a Tuesday afternoon at 1:00 or whenever, when there's no one there, because I think that's when you're really a little bit more, you're a little bit more focused. You're not looking at, who's in the pew in front of you, who's in the pew behind you, how much longer is this going to last? And I think for me, I pray the rosary a lot. Mm-hmm. I think that's a really big thing because I think the saying is, when you're praying, you're thinking about somebody else. So,
yeah.
I love this idea of redemption, or, making sure that you're giving someone another opportunity when they come forward and are vulnerable with you that you may have not given a second chance. Curious on if, you've needed redemption and came forward in the group and
sure. Yeah.
Felt like you got.
I am not perfect. I'll be the first one to say that. I will be the first one to say, and to kind of just backtrack a little bit. I think that, the perfect church, I think for me would be one where people give up and give a COT. And somebody else said that in one of the Gloom podcasts, but just think about it. If you would go to whatever church, whatever, basis it is, and 4, 5, 6 people, guys, girls, kids, got up and gave a 3-minute COT, because how often during a COT have you lost focus on what someone's saying? Rarely. Because first of all, they're not very long.
Right.
And they're usually pretty heartfelt. And the biggest thing is you're interested to hear what they have to say. I'm interested to hear what you got to play say. I want to know what you're going to say. I want to know what's on Kaki's mind that week. I want to know, what's going through Slow Pitch's head. I want to know those things. And so I wish we could have more of those at church. If we could do that, I think that'd be a perfect thing. So, you certainly hear about people considering F3 to be their church. And I think I can see why people say that. So, but have I needed redemption? Sure. Keep praying for me, please. Yeah. Don't stop. Absolutely.
Hey, Retweet, man, something that I just love about you, and I even see a little bit of it as we're talking here today, but just you can tell me I'm way off base here, but when you start talking about people like Chris or other guys' stories, I see sort of your heart starting to shine through, maybe get a little bit emotional. And I think it's because you love a lot. And I'm just curious where that comes from. Like how did you develop that? That's definitely not my default. And I see that in you. I admire that in you.
Well, I think some of it comes with age, because as as both you guys get older and your kids get older and, your friends are getting older, even most of my buddies say, they'll start telling a story and they're like, God, they start bawling for no reason at all. So I think some of that's age, but, I think the vulnerability that's come from F3 has created a little bit more of that as well.
Yeah.
And then just, seeing your time kind of, I'm certainly not near the end, but I'm in that, Free Lead talks about, the first 500, the second 500, and the third 500. I'm starting to see that I'm getting in that, that third 500 and, really appreciating things. But, the impact that people have had on me and how people have been kind to me makes me feel that way a lot.
Yeah. I love it, man. It's so cool. It's something that I just admire about you. I appreciate that a lot.
Thank you. Yeah, it's hard for me sometimes to tell a story, or even some COTs where I'm like, God, am I gonna bawl here during this thing? But you know what? It doesn't bother me, other than the fact that I can't keep on message sometimes. That's probably the big thing. It's like, I want to get this out, but I don't want to. It's not that, again, I don't mind becoming emotional. It's like I just want to finish this. And so a lot of times when I talk about Chris, it becomes a very emotional thing for me. And, I've given COTs. My wife was in a very bad accident in 2016. I told that story once, and that was really hard because I, broke down what happened and all those things. And so I think the age and just being appreciative of things has caused a lot of that for me. Yeah.
What a cool thing, though, for men to just see, like, hey, it's okay for us to have feelings and for them to show sometimes, it's just, that in and of itself is such a leadership lesson for.
I can't imagine people in 1980, 90, you name the year, coming together like we've come together here and tell their story. As short of, some support groups and things like that. Imagine your parents or your uncles, your grandfathers coming together and sharing something in a Q source or, getting emotional in a COT. No way. Maybe, but no way would that have happened. And so I think that we've come a long ways with that.
Hey, are you the type of guy that likes to get up early in the winter to battle your jester? Do you love listening to people drone on and on and on about COVID in the gloom? Would you trust your vision to a guy nicknamed Cataracts? Well, if the answer to any of these questions is yes, fellas, you have bigger problems than you think. Dr. Cataracts, aka Dr. Wolf, can't solve all of your problems, but he can certainly help you solve the problems related to your eye health and vision. You will find many F3 principles throughout his practice. Check him out today at Exclusively Eye Care. Hey, the other question on the third F sort of vein, tell us about like community service and some of those events. Have you had a chance to get involved in any of those? I know you mentioned the poker tournament, which is kind of second and third.
That's certainly community service, but that's a little bit more fun. So I would say, like a lot of your guests on here, that's certainly something I could do better. I certainly have done some things, done some Heartland Hope, helped the CSOP at Boys Town. I took my daughter to a couple things. That's something I need to be better about. I definitely need to be better about that because, there's nothing like giving back and appreciating when you see someone who is in a less fortunate place than you to make you appreciate what you have and make you realize that some of your problems aren't what you really think they are. So that's certainly a goal for me in 2024 is to become more active in that. And I will certainly strive to do better with that. So I really appreciate guys like Vanderlei and Lemelon, those guys that put the time and energy into that. And it's amazing how F3 guys are so supportive of things like that. You know, if you said at your school, hey, we need 15 people to come pick up trash on a Saturday morning, it'd be at a PTA meeting. It'd be crickets.
Mm-hmm.
You say that at a coffee on Thursday morning, they'll be like, well, I'll be there at 10. I can do it too. 15 guys raise their hand in 5 minutes. It's just amazing how, giving guys are and things like that. So I need to be better. That's a goal of mine. Definitely.
Well, I think that's fine. And I struggle with the same, right? I mean, even before F3, my comment was, yeah, I think I'm pretty philanthropic, and I wasn't. And then I come into F3, and I'm still not the most philanthropic guy. just the fact that there's opportunity here, I think, is a great thing. And I think
there's so many good opportunities.
Yeah. The other point of this is to talk about leadership here. So we are curious about your time at Paradise. What went into taking over the reins? How did IC ask you? Did you force you into it? I mean, walk us through it.
No, I was very appreciative of the ask. So Tater had asked me, several months before about running a site, and I never really took the reins and jumped into it as much as I should have. It's just something I was a little hesitant to do. Again, I was transitioning with the job, and so I just never pursued it as much as I probably should have. But I knew I wanted to run a site, and IC was coming to the end of his reign, and he asked me, he said, would you be interested in taking over Paradise? I don't think he'd finished asking me. I said yes, because Paradise was always a fun place because I hadn't run that much in a long time, but I loved Paradise because I loved the route through the hills, loved the variation of that. There was always a really good group of guys there, and then I wasn't always staying for the whole Q source, but I would usually stay for 10 or 15 minutes, and so I really liked that. And I knew that would make me stay for the whole thing. And so it was an immediate yes. He didn't have to strong arm me. And I said, yeah, absolutely. When do you want to do it? And, he said, well, how about this? I go, great, let's do it. So it was an immediate, absolute yes, I wanted to do that. And I absolutely cherished my time at Paradise because, it always gave me something to look forward to. I loved helping plan to find the cues because it was always, I think in the 52 weeks I had it, I think I only had one or two guys say, hey, man, I'm really sorry. I just can't do it right now. And I think one of those guys reached back out to me like, yeah, I can do it. Yeah, I'll do it. So it was never a challenge. It was really fun to do that. And then it always gave me something to look forward to right in the middle of the week. And it was consistent. I think the consistency part of that was such a big thing. And I loved, every Wednesday going into wheat fields, and there was Ann every Wednesday, and she was always hugging me. And so I really, really enjoyed the time. But nothing gave me as much joy as getting the flag out back of my truck and planting it. That was just so fun. And then doing it, bringing the flag to other sites as well, and knowing that you were carrying a flag. That's just such a cool thing. And, I planted my front yard during the week sometimes because it was just cool. Yeah. So I love that. Absolutely.
There's a little bit of pride that comes with that for sure. I mean, you
no
feel
question.
a little proud that you're carrying around. And I like that you were. I will say, I had never done Q Source before, and you had actually asked me to get on the queue. And I love how you led me into it. You said, hey, I want to get you on the queue. I said, well, okay, no problem. By the way, there's Q Source here. Oh, I've never done it. Oh, don't worry. Here's the passage. See you in the morning. And you kind of just let me either fail or succeed. And obviously in F3, no one really ever fails. So I really appreciated the push there. I am curious, your transition from just an attendee, right? Those 10, 15 minutes you could make it to actually leading the Q Source discussions. What was that transition like?
It was great.
Did you come to appreciate?
As the Q Source goes on, you get to hear guys get more vulnerable during the course of each individual one. So, there might not be much talking for the first 5 or 6 or 7 minutes, but inevitably it just goes on its own. And, a lot of times, having led it, having witnessed it, having been there, sometimes the leader of Q Source only asks 1 or 2 questions and it just goes. And all of a sudden it's, hey, we better wind this down because it's getting a little late. So, and then sometimes guys aren't as open and, guys have to pry things out of me. If Ice-T's leading Q Source, he's going to ask everybody there something. So be prepared for that. And that's really good because some guys will just sit back and not say very much. He's going to ask you something. And that's some of that shared leadership that you're going to see, because everybody gets to participate, and some people participate more. But that's what I saw over the course of the evolution of my time there was, how much people would evolve and how much they would talk. And then you have someone who talked very little, but then 4, 5, 6 weeks later, they were very vocal in some of the things they were saying. And I had not seen that before, so that was really cool. I really appreciated that.
That's awesome. Hey, I just want to go back and just clarify, because you said your favorite part was putting the flag in your truck, but I thought you told me your favorite part was when I would call you afterwards looking for my wallet, and then I would find it in my car. So I think I did that 3 or 4 times. I'm like, retweet, I lost my wallet. One time you actually did find it. I left it on the counter there, but man,
you're worse than me, and I'm terrible. I leave stuff everywhere I go: headphones, wallet, keys.
It's the coffee, man. The coffee must have just got to me. No,
it got to the point whenever you were there, I would kind of make sure I walk out after you and kind of look around to kind of see, like leaving a hotel room. I got to look under the bed one more time, make sure you didn't get anything.
I'm that guy. Oh, it's awesome. Well, tell us about Tight Lip and just the process of selecting him as your successor.
It really came together nicely. It was really, really easy because I remember. So I took over I think I was on maybe the 14th of September. And he came out, it was I think his first time was like the 30th of August. And so I'd met him kind of once or twice before that, not very many times. And it was maybe, I'm not sure the exact date, maybe about the 1st of October. I get out of my truck and I'm walking over, and he comes up to me again. I think I met him maybe once. And he said, are you Jerry Jacobi? And I said, yes. He says, is your wife Rebecca Jacobi? I said, yes. And then he said, your wife saved my wife's life. And so that's, it's 5 o'clock in the morning and you're still a little sleepy. But that was a very big, impactful thing for him to say. And I will tell you that, lots of people I run into know my wife because she's delivered their baby or something like that. But that was certainly different. So then he went on to tell a story about, kind of what happened with his wife. My wife was on call and had to do something, and it worked out really good. And then they went on and had a couple kids. And so, he was very, very appreciative of that. And so on the run that morning, I started thinking, that's a good guy. That's a cool guy right there. And he was clearly kind of starting to take off a little bit, even though he hadn't come out very much. And for some reason, I can't remember who it was talking about, when they started thinking about finding the next site Q and how they were kind of having a hard time with that. And I hadn't thought, but literally I'd had the flag for months. I hadn't really thought about it very much. And I got in my car that day and I pulled out of Wheatfields, pulled on a Pacific Street, was getting ready to get on the interstate. And I thought, he's the next Q. So, and I said something to him about it. Oh gosh, maybe, I don't know, a month or so later, I said, hey, listen, I really appreciate, all you're doing. And he was, taking off at other places as well. I said, I think that you'd be a great site Q and you'd be a great site Q here. And he kind of looked at me, kind of, oh, okay. And how Tight Lip is, he's quiet, but very thoughtful. And then I was gone for a little while and I let him have the flag. And, it was never a hard choice at all. It was probably the easiest choice I could possibly had with finding a replacement for me, and certainly and someone who could elevate it. And it was, what I really appreciate about him is that he's always there. He always runs. He always stays for Q source, and he wasn't the site Q. And that's someone you want who's invested in that site, and that was certainly him. So very, very easy choice.
Yeah, well, not that it's prerequisite. He's also a beast. He has a motive.
You see how much he's accelerated and doing things like the 4 hours every, running 4 miles every 4 hours, things like that, crazy things. So he's been a very big impactful person. And, he's a pre-runner and I wasn't always a pre-runner, so that's important. And then I was really happy I kind of locked him up because I think he was on the short list for several other sites as well. Mm-hmm. So it worked out really good. I'm very happy that he approached me and that he said yes. So perfect replacement.
Heck yeah.
Yeah, I am curious on the leadership piece, right? You get a site. It sounds like you're willing to take it on pretty quick. What types of leadership invigoration did you get from F3? I mean, you just took over a new role, right? A new gig sometime soon when you started into more of a management position. I mean, I'm sure you've got some leadership stuff at home that you're making sure you're leading your family a certain way. What things were you able to take from being a site Q and kind of carry over into the real world?
Well, I generally from F3, probably one of the biggest things is picking up the 6, so making sure that everybody comes home, so to speak, and then making sure that everyone feels really welcomed. Because I think in that first couple months, I don't know how many times I went to a workout and somebody would text me, and often it was a site cue or the person who queued that day. Hey, it was great to see you today. Thank you for being there today. And so the inclusiveness of that, making sure that everyone felt welcome, was such a big thing for me. And that's something I've certainly tried to incorporate in every aspect that I do is, hey, if nothing else, it's great to see you. How are you doing? And how is your life? And how are things going for you? And I would ask those questions before, but I'm not sure I was as sincere with those questions as I was. Mm-hmm. And I think the other part about being a site Q is just, the consistency, that, the days are going to change. It's going to be cold. It's going to be hot. It's going to be raining. It's going to be snowing. But you're the consistent person there that's always there. And, you set the tone for greeting everyone. You set the tone by making sure everyone feels appreciated, making sure that everyone feels like they were there. I think those are things I took away from that. And that's certainly not me. That was, I witnessed that in everyone else who was a site Q or a Q at another F3 site, certainly before I started doing it. So those are the big things I've learned, is the inclusiveness and making sure everyone feels welcome and appreciated.
Have you found, so I love that. And I've tried to apply, picking up the 6, like at my work too, right? Like, but I think there's a level of, I don't know if it's like competition in the corporate world, or maybe it's medicine, but that makes it really hard, right? Because people are like, well, why would I go pick up that person? I want to do better than them. But have you, I don't know, what's been your experience trying to like?
Yeah, I see what you're saying there. And I think some of it is.
Well, then at what point do you cut someone out? Like you're making, you know what I'm saying? From a manager perspective.
It's really tough because, the best saying is you can't help those that don't want to be helped. Yep. So I think, there's only so much energy you can put into someone else, and you realize that, hey, they're dragging me down, or they're not helping my organization. Whereas I think at F3, the people that are dragging you down, that's because they just started, or because they're injured, they've got some other things going on, but they're not going to tell you that. You don't know if somebody's got a bad leg or a bad knee, or they're just sick. You don't know that, and they're not going to tell you that. So I think that you have to kind of dig a little bit deeper. In the workplace environment, sometimes I think it's maybe they're not accelerating because they don't know how, and they need help.
Yeah, that's
so great. It's how many times have somebody given you instructions? You're like, great, I got this, and then you start doing something like, no idea. Okay, but I'm not going to ask because then I'm an idiot. And if someone can identify that you're struggling, and you can verbalize, hey, I really don't know what I'm doing here, then you can help them succeed a lot more. So I think that's what that's taught me is, listen, just because they're not succeeding isn't because they don't want to, it's because they don't know how. But you're right, Tony. At some point in time, you can't let somebody suck the life out of you, and you have to move on from them at some point in time. So, but that's generally not at F3. I know that. So
right, yeah, it's a shared belief in the mission that sort of we're all striving for. I love that. I'm curious too, as you think about sort of other ways that you've led. And I don't know if you view this as leadership, but I think a lot of guys reach out to you, plantar fasciitis or knee pain or whatever kind of pain. And I think there is some leadership just telling a guy, hey, you got to rest, right? Like you get, but I don't know, how has that all sort of funneled in? How have you balanced sort of the kind of professional aspect of that, but not, I don't know. Have you had some guys that you've actually converted to patients, and other guys you're just like mentoring in the Gloom, or how?
Sure, but that's never the goal. The goal of being a member of F3, especially for me, is not to try to have business. So a little bit that's kind of some of that's my community service, I think, because if I can spend time to keep someone healthy, I think that's a big deal. I'm a big believer in prevention, and if you have a rotator cuff issue or a plantar fasciitis or a bad back, great. But let's look back and let's see what we can do to make sure that doesn't happen again. And I'm welcome to have anybody call me anytime. We've got IC is a good resource. I think Zorro's a PT. There's some other guys, Theraban. So there's other guys out there that I think do a great job as well. But I think I have knowledge that can help someone, and if I can help them so they can continue to be part of the Gloom, or can they continue to play catch with their kid or just walk with their wife, and I have that knowledge to help them, then I owe that to them. To make sure I can convey that to them. So I never feel, if someone's listening to this and they've got an issue, call me. And, I'll walk you through some things. If I think you need to go see a physician, I'll tell you that. If it's something I don't know how many times I've gone down to my basement at 6:30 at night or 8 o'clock at night, done a Zoom call with someone and said, okay, this is what you should do. and this is what's going to help you. And part of that is because, again, I want guys to be healthy. And I think that once you get injured, that starts that spiral of, I'm too sore to do this. I'm going to take a couple of days off. And pretty soon it's a month later. You haven't worked out. You missed out on the Gloom. And that's an awful feeling. And I had an injury going back a couple of years ago. I had plantar fasciitis. It was so stinking bad that I didn't post more than maybe once every 2 weeks for a couple months. And it stunk. I mean, I hated that because, I'll go to coffee. Maybe, but you're not. And so I think that anything you can do to keep someone healthy is a very big deal. And again, I've got that knowledge. So if I can help someone, I'm definitely going to try to help them with that. So yeah, if somebody's hurt, reach out to me anytime, or reach out to one of the other guys that's a medical professional. Absolutely. Don't just sit back and wait for it to get better. But I will tell you that if you call me, I'm going to tell you a couple of things. One is you might need to take a couple of days off. 2 is you're going to need to use some ice probably. 3 is that's the stupidest exercise we possibly do. Don't do that. So, if your shoulder hurts and you're doing chicken peckers or Australian mountain climbs, whatever, I'm going to tell you shouldn't do that, or pull-ups. So, there's some common sense involved in that as well. So, and oh, by the way, if you get out of your truck at 5:28 and think you're going to run 4 miles at Paradise, 3 miles at Paradise, and you don't do anything to warm up, you're going to get hurt at some point in time. So have some common sense in it. So.
Well, and I can attest to that. And I really do appreciate your service like mindset. I mean, I called you 3 weeks ago with an injury, and I haven't seen a bill, and you've been following up and saying, how are you doing? And so I do recommend that people reach out. And I
Is there treatment for what Pony has? I'm just kidding.
There's not.
There's no cure for what I have.
Yeah.
No.
What do you see? I guess, are there any injuries you see most commonly?
Yeah, I would say in our group, we've got a group of guys that, I would love to know what the average age is. It's probably somewhere between 36 to 42 would be my guess. And, I think the most common things you find there are plantar fasciitis or heel pain, because you take guys who have not maybe been that active and they accelerate rapidly and your body's not ready for that. And then, meniscus injuries in the knees, shoulder tendonitis, and then just a strain back. Those would be the most common things that, that I've seen in just the average PAX member. And that's what I would expect is, things like that, not warmed up, haven't done things in a long time. And just like me, you come out, you love it. All of a sudden you're posting 4, 5, 6 days a week when your average exercise before that was going for a walk with your wife. Okay, something's going to break down. That's going to happen. So it's only a matter of time before something happens, but that's okay. We'll get you through it. There's ways around it.
Those were my injuries, Blake, just so you know. He said
all of them.
He said you're too hardcore, Pony. He said you need to tone it down just a little bit.
I don't know. Well, hey, the other piece, and we started talking about this early on, but have been trying to get, guys' perspective on legacy and sort of what, when you think about your life, your legacy, maybe other men that you look up to, how do you want to be remembered, or what are the things you're trying to do today so that people would remember you the way you want to be remembered?
Well, I think, for me, I would just like to have people say, he's got really good kids. So that would be a big thing for me, because I think that when people see you, that's great. But when people see the impact you've had on others, and for me, there's no bigger impact on me than my kids. So that's number one. And then I think I'd like to have people say, at some point in time, he helped me do something, whatever it was, with an injury. He helped me move. He helped me, do something. But then at the same time, I like to have the people say, but I was able to help him as well. Because I think that, you can help people a lot, but receiving help is a big thing. And so people, I think, really feel like they make an impact on you and you on them when it's a shared experience, and you can do that. So I think those are my 2 big things is, how people perceive my kids, in life, and not just, academic success or job success, but, what are they like as individuals? How do they treat other people? So that's number one. And then, what impact can I have on people by helping them, I think is a huge thing for me as well. And a little bit ago, we talked about Chris. I think, no bigger impact on all of us than wait time. So you think about, how can someone who's not from here and has no connection to here move here, And 5 years later, there's, I don't know how many guys we have that post on a regular basis, probably, 150 to 300. And then, a couple thousand that at some point in time have gotten up in the morning and worked out. I mean, how would you ever believe that could happen? There's no way.
Yeah.
There's absolutely no way. You can't write a book about this and say that some guy who no one knows is going to move to Omaha and have an impact. And so you think the impact he's had, at the very superficial level, how much weight has been lost by PAX members in the last 5 years? 20,000 pounds? I don't even know. I mean, so that's a huge deal. So how many lives has that saved? There's been at least one or two guys that, I hate to say it, would have had a heart attack or would have, developed, really bad diabetic complications. But they're not going to do that now. So that's a huge thing. And then the mental component of that, how many guys are happier now because they have PAX members who they consider to be friends or acquaintances, or, now they've got golfing buddies, now they've got vacation buddies, now they've got a purpose to do something with someone else. So that's a huge thing. And you just can't downplay that. And you bring in the philanthropic issues, how much money has been donated, how much time has been given. So I think from a legacy standpoint, there's probably been no one who's had a bigger legacy impact in my life, other than parents, than Wait Time.
Yeah.
I love it. It is so cool to think about, and so many of the spider web sort of connections, right? We won't know till maybe we get to the other side. But I was trying to think of, like, if I can just impact one guy, one person, and focus on that for each day. But I really like the servant attitude, and gosh, just thinking about how our kids reflect us and that impact that has on legacy. I really appreciate your thoughts there. That has me thinking about all the ways I need to change my parenting. But I do want to say, you have helped me, because I know there have been times where I'm struggling as a dad, and you've got some experience and some wisdom in that area. And I know I've asked you for advice, or even just blurted my mouth about what's going on. And I know there's been several times where you've given me some insight to just help right the ship. So I appreciate you.
Absolutely. And I think it's important that when someone's received help from you, that you acknowledge that. I think that's a big thing, because people help us all the time and we say thank you, but we don't follow up with that and say, hey, listen, this really helped me, and you don't know how much it's helped me, so I need to tell you that. Because then what does that do to you? It makes you feel good, but it makes you want to continue to help other people, which is such a
Well, and that kind of goes into what Plague and I were talking before this podcast started, about honoring other people. And how do you do that, right? I mean, this podcast was developed to honor IQ leaders and share your story. I guess from your perspective, how can we honor other guys in the Gloom?
I think number one, continue posting, and keep going out, and then make sure that you keep acknowledging when you see someone else accelerating. I think that's such a huge thing. You look at someone who wasn't able to run, wasn't able to do a full Murph, and now they are. Acknowledge that. And then, when you haven't seen someone for a long time, I think reaching out to them is such a big thing. Hey, I haven't seen you in a while. How are you doing? And not to go back too much, I think I joined F3 at the perfect time, because it was cold, it was winter, and it had certainly taken off. I was like number 700, I think. So certainly there were a lot of guys. But for about the first month, there was hardly any new guys. In fact, one time on a Saturday, we named the guy Ripken, and this was all Tater, because he kept the streak going of a new guy every week. And so it was really nice, because I knew everybody for a while. Well, then there was such this acceleration in the spring. There were so many new guys. But to have guys reach out to you and acknowledge you, hey, where you been? I haven't seen you in a while. You want to do this? I think that's so important. And I think that, as we get bigger, that's a hard thing to do. So we need to make sure we keep doing that. We need to make sure that the site queue reaches out, the queue that day reaches out and keeps in touch with the new guys, because otherwise they just get lost in the mix. And that's something that can happen very quickly.
Heck yeah. Hey, before I forget, are you, what's next for you leadership wise? You taking on any new leadership roles or doing anything after the site queue role?
So I'm part of the central leadership team with Slow Pitch and Stinger and Khakis, which I just kind of joined that. So I'm really looking forward to that. It's going to help that grow. And then I'm sure there'll be other things coming up as we go along. So I think my big role now, is not certainly as a senior member of the PAX, but is to continue to make sure that people see, me accelerating them and then looking at them and saying, hey, let me know what I can do to help you. How can I help you? And I'm going to follow up people on that. So they make sure that it's not just a superficial comment. What can I do to help you on a daily basis? What can I do to help you with, what you're struggling with in your life? And I look forward to that as much as anything else.
That's cool. I love it.
Yeah.
I love that for you, and what a great role for you. And while you're thinking of other people and what you can do for them, what can we do for you? If we see you out in the gloom.
I'm very, very, very blessed. I've got 3 great kids. I have a fantastic wife. I listen to the Cataracts podcast, and he talks about how appreciative he is of his wife, and how he's I don't want to quote she's better looking than she was when they first got married. I feel the same way about my wife. I feel very blessed because I have a very good job. Things are good for me, but I forget that, and I think that continue to make sure you have gratitude in your heart is something that I struggle with sometimes, and so a reminder of how good things are for me, I think, is a good thing, and just that's something that you want more all the time. And so just being happy with what you have and being thankful, I think, is one thing that would be very good for me. It's just to remember that sometimes.
I love it. It is National Gratitude Month, although this probably won't air until like January 2024. So, but, well, man, Retweet, it's been so great just to hear your story. And I've just, again, really appreciate who you are as a man and a leader and the impact you've had on me. And I know countless other guys. So just thanks for opening up today. And I'm excited to see you out there in the gloom coming up. But we'll do a little Name-A-Rama, kind of take us out here. All right, I'll start. Brandon Flehardy, 37, The Plague.
John Woodworth, 32, Pony Express.
Pony Express.
Hey! Jerry Jacobi, 50, Retweet.
Respect. And normally you have the hat, right? You have the Chris Gradiville hat.
Yeah. I turn the Gradiville hat around and point to that. That's my, sign of respect for him, I think. So I don't really have a call sign that's really big, but the hat point's my deal, I think.
I love it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you, man.
Thank you, guys. I really enjoyed this, and this is a great thing you guys are doing. Please keep doing it.
Thanks, brother.
Have a great day, guys.
Thanks, guys.